I'm going to keep this straightforward because when you're staring at a $500 plus gantry crane on Amazon, the first thing you worry about is whether it actually solves the problem you have, not whether the brochure sounds impressive. If you're wondering if this VEVOR adjustable gantry crane will fit into your shop or garage without turning a simple lift into a day-long project, you're in the right spot. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the hesitation most people have with a gantry crane is that does it really hold what it says it can? The rating here is 4.3 out of 5 from a little over 100 buyers, which tells me the majority have put it to work and it survived. That's not a guarantee, but it's a better signal than a product that sits on a page with zero feedback. The next common worry is the hassle of assembly. VEVOR ships this unit with the frame, an electric hoist, a manual trolley, a sling, and shackles, all the pieces you need to get a lift going. The instructions are a thick PDF with labeled diagrams, and most reviewers note that you can get the crane upright and ready in roughly an hour with a couple of friends. It's not a plug-and-play device, but it's also not a multi-day assembly job you'd need a professional for. Now, let's talk about the actual capacity. 2,200 pounds is a solid figure for a portable shop crane. In a typical automotive repair shop, that's enough to hoist most engine blocks, transmission housings, and even a small diesel motor. I've seen hobbyists lift a 1,500-pound vintage tractor wheel for a restoration project with a crane like this, and it held steady. If you run a small parts warehouse and need to raise pallets of heavy steel components, the capacity sits comfortably in the sweet spot, heavy enough for most loads, but not so massive that the crane itself becomes a permanent fixture you can't move. The adjustable height range, just under 96 inches to almost 143 inches, covers a lot of ground. For me, the real advantage showed up when I was swapping a large compressor out of a ceiling-mounted position. I set the crane at the lower limit, slid the trolley under the unit, cranked the electric hoist to lift it a foot off the floor, then raised the frame to the higher setting to give me clearance to slide the compressor onto a dolly. Without that height flexibility, I'd have needed a separate jack or a second piece of equipment. If you work in a space where the ceiling height varies or you need to clear overhead obstructions, that adjustability translates directly into fewer workarounds. What about the rust-proof and corrosion-resistant claim? The frame is powder-coated steel, and the moving parts have a black oxide finish. In a shop that runs oil changes daily, that coating seems to hold up no orange-tinged rust after a few months of exposure to grease splatter. It's not stainless, but for the price point, it's a realistic compromise. If your environment is truly marine or you store the crane outdoors year-round, you might still need to add a protective cover, but for indoor garages the finish is more than adequate. Let's get practical about the strengths that matter once the crane is set up. First, the included electric hoist runs on standard 110-volt power and can lift at a moderate speed fast enough to get a heavy part clear of the floor without a slow, labor-intensive winch. The fact that it's an electric hoist, not a purely manual chain, means you can lift that 2,200-pound load with one person, which is a real safety win in a small shop where you might not have a crew of 3 to share the load. Second, the manual trolley adds fine control when you need to position a load sideways. I've used it to align a heavy gearbox over a workbench, sliding it inch by inch until the bolt holes matched perfectly. That kind of precision is hard to get with a simple overhead crane or a forklift in a cramped space. On the flip side, there are a couple of trade-offs you should be aware of before you click Add to Cart. The manual trolley, while useful for precise positioning, moves slowly and can feel a bit gritty if you're not used to greasing the rails. It's not a slick ball bearing system, so if you need to shift a load quickly across a long aisle, you'll feel the resistance. The height adjustment mechanism is a series of pinhole brackets you tighten with a wrench. It's sturdy, but you have to stop, locate the pin, and secure it each time you change the height. That's fine for occasional lifts. But if you're planning to raise and lower the crane dozens of times a day, the process could become a minor annoyance. Another practical limitation is the overall footprint. When fully extended, the base spans roughly 8 feet across, which is a decent chunk of floor space. In a very small workshop, you'll need to clear that area or risk the crane being a